She fought with the CEO at their fake wedding. Then he shocked everyone with a real proposal. What would you do if a billionaire offered to marry you, not for love, but for business? Would you walk away, or would you sign the contract that could save your family? Comment yes if you would want to know what happened next. And let us go back to where it all began, with Evelyn Carter. Rain slid down the glass walls of a rooftop bar in Midtown Manhattan, tracing silver lines against the night. Inside, the last guests were leaving, laughter fading beneath the hum of soft jazz and the clatter of empty champagne flutes. Staff hurried to clean up, but one woman moved slower, careful, methodical. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She stacked plates, her hands pale from the cold, her uniform still damp from the downpour she had walked through to get here. Evelyn was 28, an event planner's assistant who had learned to survive on grit and tips. Her back ached from long shifts, but she stayed late because the overtime meant another meal for her mother in the hospital. When the others left, she stayed behind to wipe the marble bar. That was when she heard a voice steady, low, and calm. "Leave those. I will have the staff handle it." She turned, startled. A man stood near the window, his dark suit untouched by the chaos of the night. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, with the stillness of someone who was used to being obeyed. Rain and city lights painted his reflection across the floor like glass. "I can finish in 5 minutes," Evelyn said, brushing hair from her face. "It is my job." The man stepped closer, stopping just far enough to be polite. "Miss Carter," he said, and her name on his tongue made her freeze. "Marry me, as a contract." For a moment she thought she had misheard him. "Excuse me?" "I said marry me," he repeated. "This would be a 6-month arrangement. Public appearances, events, photographs. In exchange, your mother's medical bills are paid in full, and you will receive $200,000. She stared at him, heartbeat rising. "Who are you?" "Noah Langford," he said. "Chief Executive Officer of Langford Industries." The name made the air feel heavier. Evelyn had planned his company's galas. She had seen his face on magazine covers, always captioned with words like power and empire. Now that man was standing in front of her, speaking to her as if she were part of a business deal. "This is insane," she whispered. "Perhaps," Noah replied, "but it is real. My board prefers a married chief executive officer during a major acquisition. Appearances matter. I do not have time for a real relationship, and I need someone who will not pretend beyond the script. Someone honest." "Why me?" "Because you do not chase wealth," he said. "You work, you endure. That makes you believable." Her pulse hammered in her ears. She thought of her mother's thin wrist hooked to a hospital 4, of the past due notice folded in her bag. Still, pride flared inside her chest. "You could ask anyone," she said. "Why would I agree to something so heartless?" His eyes softened, just for a second. "Because it might save a life." The room felt smaller. Rain pressed against the windows like it wanted in. Evelyn looked at the stack of plates, the flickering city below, the man who was either offering her salvation or ruin. "If I say yes," she said quietly, "there will be rules, will there not?" "There will be," Noah answered. "You will see them soon." She exhaled slowly. Practical people do not dream, they decide. And tonight, one decision would change everything. That was the night Evelyn Carter first met the man she would one day fight in front of hundreds, and the man who would shock the world with what he did next. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us continue the story. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving Manhattan wrapped in a silver mist. Evelyn Carter woke up in her small apartment above a laundromat in Queens. The sound of dryers rumbled through the walls, a low hum that reminded her that life never paused for anyone. Her phone vibrated beside her bed. A single text from an unknown number appeared. "Langford Industries, 10 a.m. sharp. Bring identification." She stared at it for a full minute, her stomach turned. Maybe she had dreamed the entire conversation on that rooftop. Maybe exhaustion had made her hallucinate. But when she opened her closet and saw her only clean blouse wrinkled but neat, she knew she would go. Because if there was even a chance that Noah Langford's offer was real, it could mean her mother's survival. By 9:30, Evelyn stood in front of Langford Tower, a glass monolith scraping the gray sky. The revolving doors reflected her nervous face. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, quiet elevators, people moving with purpose. She felt out of place among them, a speck of dust in a machine made of power. At the top floor, an assistant led her into a private conference room. Noah Langford was already there, seated at a long table. He was reading documents, composed as ever. Without looking up, he said, "You came." Evelyn crossed her arms. "You texted." "What?" He finally raised his eyes, and the faintest hint of amusement touched his expression. "I take that as a yes." He gestured to the folder before him. "This is the agreement. It includes terms and compensation, reviewed by both legal teams." "Legal teams?" she echoed. "Mine and yours. I hired one for you," he said simply. She opened the folder. The pages smelled of ink and professionalism. Paragraphs of conditions. She traced the bold header, "Confidential Marriage Contract, Evelyn Carter and Noah Langford." He began reading aloud. Rule 1. We do not fall in love. Rule 2. We do not share a bedroom. Rule 3. We attend 6 public events together. Rule 4. We maintain discretion. Rule 5. The marriage ends quietly after 6 months, unless renewed by mutual consent. Evelyn looked up. "You even planned how it ends." "I plan everything," he said. "And what do you get from this?" "A stable image," he replied. "Shareholders trust a family man more than a bachelor. You will help me close a merger worth billions. You will also help your mother live." The mention of her mother softened her anger. Still, she asked, "And what if I break one of your rules?" He leaned back slightly. "Then you walk away with nothing." For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Evelyn could hear her heartbeat in her ears. She took the pen resting beside the papers. It was silver, heavy, engraved with the Langford crest. She rolled it between her fingers. "You said I am honest," she murmured. "So here is the truth. I do not like you. I do not trust you. But I do not have the luxury of pride right now." He nodded once, the gesture slow and deliberate. Honesty accepted. Evelyn signed her name. Each stroke of the pen sounded final, like closing a door behind her. When it was done, Noah stood. "You start tomorrow. Fittings, public briefings, and etiquette training. The wedding is scheduled for 3 weeks from today." 3 weeks? "Yes," he said, as if it were a normal timeline for marrying a stranger. He offered his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm, businesslike. "Welcome to Langford Industries, Mrs. Langford," he said. Evelyn froze, the new name echoing in her mind. It did not feel like a title. It felt like a warning. As she stepped back into the elevator, she glanced at the silver pen still in her hand. It gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights, heavy with the weight of her decision. Outside, the city roared back to life, and for the first time, Evelyn realized that every choice has a price, and hers had just been signed in ink. The city moved fast, but the days that followed moved faster. Langford Tower became Evelyn's new world, shiny, intimidating, and full of unspoken rules. The contract she had signed was now more than words on paper. It was her daily reality. Each morning began the same way. A black sedan arrived at her apartment building, its driver greeting her with a polite, "Good morning, Mrs. Langford." Every time he said it, the title landed like a stone in her stomach. She still lived in the same small apartment, but her days were suddenly filled with designers, etiquette trainers, and photographers preparing for what the world would soon believe was a love story. Inside the Langford penthouse, staff moved like quiet shadows. Evelyn was given a schedule, a binder that told her how to walk, what to wear, and even how to hold Noah's arm during public appearances. Every hour of her life was now planned. She sat through fittings with a stylist who measured her in silence while Noah reviewed documents at the other end of the room. "You do not talk much," she said to him one afternoon, standing barefoot while a tailor pinned the hem of a pale dress. He looked up briefly. "Talking is rarely productive. Neither is treating people like employees when they are supposed to be your wife," she replied. He closed the file, studying her for a moment. "You are not my wife, Miss Carter. You are my solution." The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She forced a polite smile. "Thank you for the reminder." The next week was a blur of press interviews, photo sessions, and lessons in refinement. Evelyn learned how to smile without revealing too much emotion, how to greet shareholders by name, and how to look like she belonged in the world of wealth. Every evening she returned to her apartment exhausted, her reflection in the mirror looking more like a stranger. Yet behind the stiffness there were moments that slipped through the cracks. Once, During a charity luncheon rehearsal, a waiter stumbled and spilled water across the table. Instinctively, Evelyn grabbed a napkin and helped him, ignoring the stares of executives. Noah watched her quietly. Later in the car, he said, "You did not have to do that." She shrugged. "I worked his job once. I know how it feels." Notoi. For the first time, he smiled, not the polished one from magazines, but something human. "That is inconvenient," he said softly. "Inconvenient? For someone who prefers not to feel anything." She turned toward the window, pretending not to notice the way his voice had changed. 3 weeks passed, and the day of the wedding approached. The ceremony would take place in the Langford ballroom, beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen rain. 1,000 guests were expected, every one of them important. Evelyn's dress arrived in a sealed garment bag, and with it, a note from the stylist. "Do not open until the morning of the event." The night before the ceremony, Evelyn found herself in the penthouse kitchen, unable to sleep. The city glowed beyond the windows, restless and alive. Noah entered quietly, wearing a gray sweater instead of a suit. Without the armor of his position, he looked almost approachable. "You should rest," he said. "I could say the same to you," she replied. He poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter. "You are nervous." "I am about to marry a stranger in front of 1,000 people," she said. "Nervous is polite." His eyes met hers across the dim light. "For what it is worth, you will do fine." "Fine," she repeated, almost laughing. "That is your highest compliment, is it not?" Something in his expression shifted. He took a slow sip of coffee, then said, "You do not belong in my world, Evelyn. That is what makes you dangerous." Before she could ask what he meant, he left the kitchen, leaving the faint scent of coffee and rain behind him. She stood alone, her hands wrapped around a cup gone cold, and realized she had crossed a line she could not uncross. She was no longer just Evelyn Carter, event assistant. She was about to become Mrs. Langford in name, in headlines, and in the eyes of everyone who would be watching. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, light as dust. Somewhere between survival and surrender, the real story was beginning. The morning of the wedding arrived wrapped in winter sunlight. The Langford ballroom glimmered with white orchids, crystal chandeliers, and guests dressed in black tie perfection. Reporters waited outside, cameras poised for the first glimpse of New York's most unexpected bride. Evelyn stood in front of the mirror inside a private dressing suite. The gown fit her like a secret, simple, elegant, designed to impress. The stylist pinned the final curl of her hair and whispered, "You look perfect, Mrs. Langford." The name still sounded strange. Evelyn looked at her reflection, trying to recognize the woman staring back. She remembered the silver pen she had used to sign the contract and how her hands had trembled. She had promised herself she would not feel anything, that this was business. But somewhere along the way, Noah Langford had begun to confuse her. His rare smiles, his quiet presence, his unexpected moments of kindness, they had made him real, and that was dangerous. When the doors opened, the sound of music drifted in. Evelyn stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The aisle stretched before her, lined with candles and the elite of the city. At the far end stood Noah, tall and composed in a tailored black suit. Every eye in the room followed her, every camera clicked, but the moment her gaze met his, the noise faded. He nodded once, the smallest gesture of reassurance, and she felt her knees steady. The ceremony unfolded like a choreographed dance. The officiant spoke words that meant nothing. Noah slid a ring onto her finger, the cold metal sealing the illusion they had built together. The applause was polite, practiced. Hours later, at the reception, Evelyn played her role perfectly. She smiled when introduced to shareholders. She laughed when reporters asked about their love story. Each lie rolled off her tongue with surprising ease. The champagne burned her throat, but she kept drinking. As the evening wore on, a woman approached their table, a tall brunette in a designer gown, confidence dripping from every step. "Noah," she said smoothly, placing a manicured hand on his shoulder. "You never told me your wife was so refreshing." Evelyn extended her hand. "And you are?" "Vivian Holt," the woman replied. "Investor. Old friend." Evelyn caught the meaning behind the smile. Vivian was not just an investor. She was someone who had known Noah before all this. "Old friend," Evelyn repeated politely. "Then you must know him very well." Vivian's eyes glinted. "Well enough to know when he is pretending." The words hung in the air like a blade. Noah's expression did not change, but his jaw tightened. "Vivian," he said evenly, "this is neither the time nor the place." "Oh, I think it is exactly the place," she said sweetly. "Everyone here loves a good story." The nearby guests had already turned their heads. The tension was visible, electric. Evelyn's pulse quickened, but she refused to shrink. "I am sorry, Miss Holt," she said, her tone calm. "But if you came here to question my marriage, you will have to take a number. The press has been trying since breakfast." Laughter rippled through the nearby crowd. Vivian's smile faltered. Noah stood, placing a protective hand on Evelyn's back. "That is enough," he said. "You should leave." Vivian hesitated, then retreated with a tight smile, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. When she was gone, Noah leaned close and murmured, "You handled that well." Evelyn turned to face him, her voice low. "I am not one of your employees, Noah. I do not need saving." "I was not trying to save you," he said quietly. "I was trying to protect you." She met his eyes, searching for the truth behind them, but all she saw was control. Later, when the band began to play, Noah extended his hand. "One dance," he said. Evelyn hesitated. Then she placed her hand in his. The cameras flashed again as they moved together under the chandelier, strangers pretending to be lovers. His hand rested lightly on her back, his breath steady against her temple. For a fleeting moment, it felt almost real. But as she looked into his eyes, she remembered the contract, the rules, and the promise she had made to herself. She would not fall in love. Not with him. Not with anyone who treated feelings like strategy. And yet, when the dance ended, and he whispered, "Thank you, Evelyn," her heart betrayed her with one sharp, undeniable ache. The wedding had ended, but the performance had only just begun. Within days, every newspaper headline in New York carried their picture Noah Langford, the untouchable CEO, and his new wife, the woman no one had heard of before. Some called it a fairy tale. Others called it a scandal. Evelyn stopped reading after the third article. The world was fascinated by a lie she could not escape. Their life became a schedule of appearances, charity dinners, board meetings, press interviews, ribbon cuttings. Evelyn moved through them all like a figure in a snow globe, perfectly arranged, perfectly silent. Yet behind every polite smile was a question she could not shake. Who was she becoming? The first major event after the wedding was a corporate gala hosted in the Langford Ballroom, this time not for romance but for business. The hall shimmered with gold lights and the sound of live jazz. Evelyn's dress was emerald silk, chosen by a stylist who had never asked what she liked. She stood beside Noah as executives approached one after another, their compliments smooth and their eyes curious. "You have adapted well, Mrs. Langford," one of them said with a smirk. "Not every woman could turn a contract into a fairy tale." Evelyn smiled politely. "Perhaps not every man could turn a fairy tale into a contract." Hull? The comment drew laughter from nearby guests. Noah's mouth twitched, a flicker of something that could have been pride or warning. The evening moved forward, but the mood shifted when a silver-haired board member raised his glass. "To the Langfords," he said loudly. "May your union bring stability to this company." The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, and for a moment everything seemed perfect. Then came a voice from the far table. "Stability?" It was Vivian Holt again, her tone sharp enough to cut the air. "Stability built on deceit does not last." The room fell silent. Noah's expression hardened. "Vivian, that is enough." But Vivian continued, standing tall under the chandelier. "Do they know, Noah? Do they know this marriage is nothing but an act for investors?" The words struck like a thunderclap. Reporters near the stage froze. Photographers hesitated, unsure whether to capture the moment. Evelyn's pulse raced, the world spinning around her. She could have stayed quiet, could have let Noah's security escort Vivian out. But something inside her broke free, something that had been caged for too long. She stepped forward, her voice steady but fierce. "You want a story, Vivian? Here it is. I was nobody. I worked 12-hour shifts, and I still could not afford my mother's medicine. Noah offered me a contract, yes. But I signed it with full knowledge of what it was. I did it to save a life, not to buy one." The crowd murmured. Noah looked at her, not with anger, but with something closer to awe. Evelyn turned toward the cameras. "If that makes me unworthy of standing here, then so be it. At least I did not sell my soul for a headline." Applause rose slowly, hesitant at first, then stronger. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, caught off guard by the rawness of her words. Vivian's smile cracked. You are nav, she hissed. This world eats sincerity for breakfast. Evelyn took a step closer. Then it will choke on mine. Security approached, and Vivian was escorted out, her heels echoing across the marble floor. The guests began clapping again, louder this time. Noah stood beside Evelyn, his jaw tight, his eyes unreadable. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. You just turned a scandal into a victory. She met his gaze. I was not trying to win. Exactly, he said. That is why you did. The rest of the night passed in a blur of congratulations and curious smiles. Reporters whispered about the brave Mrs. Langford who had stood up for herself. For the first time, Evelyn did not feel like a prop in Noah's world. She felt like herself. When they finally returned to the penthouse, the city lights stretched endlessly below them. Evelyn removed her earrings and placed them on the table. Noah was silent, standing by the window. You surprised me tonight, he said quietly. I surprised myself, she replied. He turned toward her, and for the first time since they met, he looked uncertain. Evelyn, thank you. She nodded, unsure how to respond. The air between them was no longer cold. It was something else, something neither of them was ready to name. Outside, New York glittered like 1,000 unspoken promises. Inside, for one fragile moment, the fake marriage began to feel dangerously real. The gala had ended hours ago, yet neither of them could sleep. The penthouse sat in silence, the city lights below flickering like a restless heartbeat. Evelyn sat near the glass wall, wrapped in a robe, her hair undone for the first time in weeks. She looked out at the skyline, still replaying the night in her head, the words she had said, the applause, the way Noah had looked at her afterward. She heard footsteps behind her. Noah walked in, still in his shirt from the event, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. For once, he looked less like the CEO who ruled boardrooms and more like a man who had finally allowed himself to exhale. I did not expect you to still be awake, he said quietly. I could say the same to you, she replied. He poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. You handled tonight better than I ever could. You were brave. I was cornered, she said. Bravery is what happens when you run out of other choices. He gave a small nod, walking closer to the window. When I was 15, he began, my mother tried to defend my father at a shareholders' meeting. They humiliated her in front of everyone. I swore I would never let anyone make me feel powerless again. Evelyn turned toward him, surprised. I did not know that. You were not supposed to, he said. People trust confidence. They do not follow someone who bleeds. Her voice softened. Maybe that is why you built walls so high that even you cannot climb out of them. Lo. Noah looked at her, his expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of truth in his eyes. You think I am afraid of emotion? I think you are afraid of being human, she said. The air between them shifted, quiet but heavy. He stepped closer until they were only a few feet apart. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You make everything complicated, he said finally. Maybe that is what you need, she replied. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that felt unplanned. You are dangerous, Mrs. Langford. And you are impossible, Mr. Langford. For the first time since their arrangement began, laughter filled the room, soft, unguarded, real. The following weeks were calmer but different. They still attended events together, still lived under the terms of their contract, but something invisible had shifted. The silence between them no longer felt hostile, it felt alive. One morning, Noah insisted on driving her to a charity project his company funded. They visited a children's community center downtown. Evelyn watched him kneel to speak with a boy who had lost his parents. His voice was gentle, his patience genuine. You are good with him, she said later as they walked back to the car. He shrugged. Children do not care about money. They only listen when you tell the truth. Maybe adults should learn from them, she said. He glanced at her, a trace of admiration in his eyes. You keep saying things that stay in my head long after you stop talking. Evelyn looked away, her heart tightening. This was not supposed to happen. The first rule of the contract echoed in her mind. Do not fall in love. That night, back at the penthouse, she sat by the window again. Snow had started to fall, soft and soundless. She heard Noah's footsteps behind her but did not turn. He spoke first. You have changed this place. It used to feel like a museum. Now it feels like something else. She smiled faintly. Maybe that is what happens when people live in it. When she finally looked up, his reflection met hers in the glass. He was standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Evelyn, he said quietly, do you ever wonder if what we built is still pretend? She hesitated, her throat tight. "Sometimes," she whispered, "and that scares me." Noah took a slow breath. "It scares me too." Undo. The room fell silent except for the hum of the city. Somewhere beyond the glass, a siren wailed and faded. Inside, they stood in the fragile space between truth and illusion, unsure which side they were on anymore. That night neither of them crossed the distance between them, but both knew something had already crossed inside their hearts the line they had sworn never to touch. Winter deepened over New York, and the world outside glittered with frost. Inside the Langford Tower, the calm that had settled between Evelyn and Noah began to fracture. Success had made him visible again, and with visibility came enemies. It started with whispers. Reporters began asking questions that felt too specific, too sharp. A rumor appeared online. Langford marriage under investigation. At first, Noah ignored it, but Evelyn could see the tension in his jaw whenever his phone buzzed. Then came the news article that changed everything. An anonymous source had leaked a copy of their marriage contract. Every line of their agreement, dates, clauses, payment details was suddenly public. The press devoured it. The story went viral overnight, painting Evelyn as a gold digger and Noah as a manipulative executive hiding behind a sham marriage. By morning, the penthouse was surrounded by photographers. The board demanded an emergency meeting. When Evelyn entered the living room, Noah was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice hard. "Find out who leaked it," he said sharply, "and shut it down." She waited until he hung up. "Do they think it was me?" He did not answer immediately. The silence between them stretched thin. Finally he turned to her. "I do not know." Her heart clenched. "You think I could do that to you?" "I think someone very close to us did," he said. His tone was even, but his eyes were distant. Evelyn stepped closer. "After everything we have done, everything we have risked, you still do not trust me." "This is not about trust," he said. "It is about survival." "Maybe to you they are the same thing," she said bitterly. The conversation ended there. Noah left for the board meeting without another word. The moment the door closed, Evelyn felt the house return to what it had been before she arrived, silent, cold, empty. Hours passed. When Noah returned that night, his face was pale with exhaustion. "They want me to step down," he said quietly. "The investors are calling it a breach of ethics." Evelyn stared at him, speechless. "Because of me?" "Because of the story," he said. "Because someone wanted to see me fall." Her anger turned into something heavier. "You still think I am the one who leaked it?" He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment she saw something like regret flicker in his eyes. "I do not know what to think." The words struck harder than any accusation. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. "Then maybe you never knew me at all." She turned and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Somewhere I can breathe," she said. When the elevator doors closed behind her, Noah stood alone in the silence. Outside, cameras flashed through the glass, hungry for more scandal. Inside, he realized too late that in trying to protect his empire, he might have destroyed the only thing that had ever been real. That night, the city did not sleep, and neither did they, two people bound by a lie, undone by the truth. Days turned into a blur of headlines, meetings, and silence. Evelyn had moved out of the Langford penthouse and returned to her small apartment in Queens. The reporters found her there too, waiting outside the laundromat, shouting questions about her fake marriage. She kept her head down, carrying groceries instead of designer handbags now, pretending she could not hear them. Her mother had been discharged from the hospital, recovering slowly, unaware of the chaos surrounding her daughter. Evelyn told her that everything was fine, that the marriage had ended quietly. But every time she looked at the silver pen sitting on her nightstand, she knew nothing about it had been quiet. It had ended with noise, with cameras, with heartbreak. Meanwhile, Noah Langford had disappeared from public view. For a week, he did not show up at the company. The board replaced him temporarily. News outlets claimed he had fled the country, but he had not. He was still in New York, hidden inside an empty townhouse on the edge of Central Park, staring at the empire he might lose and the woman he already had. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. Evelyn came home to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a USB drive and a short handwritten note that said, "You deserve to know the truth." She hesitated, then plugged it into her laptop. A video file appeared. The screen flickered to life, showing a conversation recorded in an office Vivian Holt and one of Langford's senior board members. They were discussing the leak. laughing about how it would ruin Noah and force him to sell his shares. Vivian's voice was clear. Once he is out, the company is ours. Evelyn's heart pounded. It was not her. It had never been her. The next morning, she took the video to Langford Tower. Security tried to stop her, but she demanded to see Noah. When he finally appeared in the lobby, he looked older, wearier. The crowd of reporters outside could see them through the glass doors. Evelyn stepped forward and held up the USB drive. "They set you up," she said. "Vivian and the board. I have proof." Noah's eyes widened as she placed the drive in his hand. For the first time since that awful night, he seemed speechless. "How did you get this?" he asked quietly. "It does not matter," she said. "You need to show it to the board before they destroy everything." He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to read every word she was not saying. "Why are you helping me after what I did?" "Because I am not like them," she said simply. "Because despite everything, I still believe you can be better than this." Something inside him broke then, a barrier that had been built with years of pride. He nodded once. "Come with me." Logan. Together they walked past the flashing cameras side by side. The building that had once been their stage now became their battlefield. That afternoon, the video played in the boardroom. Gasps filled the air as Vivian's voice echoed across the speakers. When it ended, Noah turned toward the board. "You wanted the truth," he said coldly. "There it is." Security escorted Vivian out in silence. Justice came quietly, but it came. When the room cleared, Noah turned to Evelyn. "You saved my company," he said. She shook her head. "I did not do it for your company, Noah. I did it for the man who once told me that honesty still matters." He took a step closer. "And if that man asked for another chance, not a contract, not a performance, would you give it to him?" Evelyn looked up at him, her heart heavy and alive all at once. "That depends," she whispered. "Would it be real this time?" Noah smiled faintly. "It would be the only thing that ever was." Choo. Winter melted into the first warmth of spring, and with it came quiet restoration. The scandal faded from the headlines, replaced by fresher chaos and newer stories. Langford Industries stabilized under Noah's leadership again, this time rebuilt with transparency and humility. The board issued a public apology. Vivian Holt faced legal charges for corporate sabotage. Justice, at last, had come full circle. Evelyn kept her distance for several weeks. She needed time to breathe, to remember who she was before the whirlwind began. She went back to freelance event work, designing small weddings and charity fundraisers. Life was simpler again, busier, quieter, and real. But sometimes, when she walked past the Langford Tower, she caught herself looking up, wondering if Noah was somewhere behind the glass thinking about her too. One evening, as she locked up after an event at the City Art Gallery, the lights dimmed. The security guard waved goodnight, and she stepped into the cool spring air. That was when she noticed something unusual, a single spotlight glowing inside the gallery, directed at the main exhibit hall. Curiosity drew her back inside. When she entered the room, she froze. The walls were covered with her photographs. Pictures from the charity events she had helped plan, the community centers she had supported, even candid images of her laughing with children at the hospital fundraiser. In the center stood Noah Langford, wearing a dark suit, his hands folded behind his back. Evelyn's voice caught in her throat. "What is this?" He turned toward her, his eyes warm in a way she had never seen before. "This is called The Art of Evelyn Carter. It is an exhibition I helped sponsor. I wanted people to see the woman who changed how I understand value." She shook her head slowly. "You did not have to do this." "I did," he said softly, "because I once thought love was a weakness. You showed me it was the only real strength." For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something silver, the same pen she had used to sign their contract. The ink was faintly worn, the engraving catching the light. "I kept it," he said. "It began as a symbol of transaction, but I would like it to end as something else." He knelt, the pen trembling slightly in his hand. "Evelyn Carter, will you sign one more promise? Not a contract, not for money, not for appearances. Will you marry me for real this time?" Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. She laughed once, half in disbelief. "You are really doing this here, in front of the whole city's art gallery?" He smiled. "I learned from you. The truth deserves to be seen." She took the pen from his hand. "You already have your signature," she whispered. "It is written in everything we survived." He stood, and she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. The applause that followed came from the few lingering staff and guests who had gathered silently near the doorway. Months later, their wedding was small and quiet, just close friends, her mother, and the people from the community center who had once inspired them. No cameras, no headlines, no contracts. Only vows spoken under soft evening light. As they danced beneath the same skyline where it all began, Noah whispered, "The first signature saved my company. The second saved my life." Evelyn smiled through tears. Sometimes the contract you break becomes the vow you keep, and this time it was not for show. It was real and